Alrighty, are you guys ready for madness? Because this midweek action, we not only have 13 games that's going to be happening, but all of them is going to be taking place on Wednesday, and there's going to be one part of this midweek action where we're going to have 9 games that's going to be taking place at the same time. Oh jolly, that's going to be interesting to see how I'm going to keep an eye of all of these games. And by the way, I am wearing this Santa Cruz Breakers t-shirt, and I actually got this all the way back, I think 2 years ago when I attended their first home game when they were playing what used to be called the PDL, but now called the USL League 2, and they gave me this t-shirt for free, and I want to kind of decided to wear a couple of different kind of lower league t-shirt. I mean, I'm always wear like an MLS jersey whenever I do these preview and review video, but I want to change up a little bit, and I'm also start thinking about maybe getting some jerseys from those lower leagues around the US just to kind of support them for all of them that is kind of going through a hard time right now in terms of this whole pandemic. I mean, if you think that MLS team is losing a lot of money during this pandemic, you have no idea how those lower leagues are doing right now, and some of them are already started to be folding because of the fact that they are not playing games because of this pandemic that is stopping the season, and hence that's why there hasn't been a Sports Hop series episode ever since March, and I'm still just waiting for a time when there is going to be an announcement where that new league and NSL Pacific and also the UPSL is going to announce that there's going to be games that's going to be taking place. So yeah, but anyway, getting back into this, getting kind of got a little bit off track in terms of talk about the Sports Hop series. We'll start off with the 13-game madness on Wednesday with New England versus Montreal. Now, this one is kind of interesting because this game is actually kicking off at 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. Pacific. And obviously, it's understandable why they decided to kick off late afternoon when clearly it seemed like there's going to be no fans attending this game. But it's kind of weird if there was fans that is allowed to attend this game. That it's kind of weird that they decided to put a 5 p.m. Eastern time kickoff game in the middle of the week, and that most people are probably still at work during that time. But either way, coming into this one, New England is currently 3-6-3, while Montreal is 5-1-6. New England, they're still searching for their first home win this season, and them not getting home wins this season is really the reason why they are not considered a team that should be at least in the top half of the Eastern Conference, and that they've been a very mediocre team this season. While for Montreal, they did lose 4-1 to Philly at home, and I put home with quotation mark because they technically are playing at Red Bull Arena, which is going to be their home for the rest of the season. And in terms of injury report for New England, only 2 players that is out for their team in this game, and that is Caicedo and Carlos Hill, who is going to be out for the rest of the season. For Montreal, we got Seba, Carnera, and Tabla as the free player that is going to be out for this game, and I also forgot to use my pen to mark who I think is going to win this game. This is definitely one that I think both teams would desperately want to get a win, consider how things have gone for both of these teams in these last couple of matches, and especially for the Impact, where, you know, another player that I think I should also add in terms of the injury report, even though he's technically not injured, is Romeo Kyoto, who's now suspended for this game, and that's a big loss for Montreal, especially how he is probably the most dangerous player on the attacking end for the Impact. But I am going to say this is going to be a draw between both of these teams because, you know, I think Montreal would love to try to bounce back after that tough loss that they had. And for New England, they haven't shown this year that they've been able to get it done at home, and I just feel like this might not be a match that they could potentially take advantage and finally get a home win. So I'm going to say it's going to be a draw between both of these teams. Now, moving on, in terms of the next match, is Atlanta versus FC Dallas, and both of these teams are heading in the opposite direction. For Atlanta, they are on a downward trend where their record is now 3-2-7, and they are now winless in 6 games. For Dallas, their record is 5-4-2, and they're actually now 3rd in the Western Conference. As this game kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, Dallas, of course, have picked up points 7 out of the 8 games that they play as well, as Atlanta, as I mentioned, they are winless in 6 games and heading into the wrong direction right now. Injury reports for Atlanta, well, it have just announced today that Cubo Torres is most likely going to be out for a long spell of this year and might be out for this year after he suffered a knee sprain, which, yeah, so much for trying to find a guy that could potentially reproduce at least half amount of goal that Josef Martinez had for this season, because now they basically are back to the problem that they've been having throughout the season, is that they just don't have a number 9 that can put the goals into the back of the net. Speaking of Josef Martinez, he's also on the injury report, but we know that he's been out ever since February. And Jurgen Damm is another player that is going to be out for this game. For Dallas, Paxton Palmico also out for the season, and Zobak has an undisclosed injury, and we don't know exactly when he's going to come back. But for this one, I'm going to say Dallas is going to win this, because, you know, Luchi Gonzalez, his team has just been red hot in these last couple of games. And it doesn't matter if Dallas is playing home or away in these last couple of games. They have been able to find a way to pick up points in this game. And heck, even if Luchi Gonzalez decide not to go with a strong lineup in this game, which I think that might be the case because it's a short week and, you know, they have to travel pretty long way to Atlanta to play this game. But this is an Atlanta team that I just have no confidence whatsoever that they're going to get a lot of points for the rest of the season, and that they're kind of in a transitional year right now. Now, they've just recently signed a DP player from Linus down in Argentina, and I actually forgot what was the name of the player, but they said that he could be a really big pickup and kind of almost like a Pity Martinez, and hope that he's kind of like the next Miguel Almiron in that team on the midfield. But we shall see when exactly he's going to play for this team. I mean, I haven't heard that have he actually arrived in Atlanta yet, and if that is not the case, then he probably won't be allowed to play with this team at least for 2 weeks. But at least Atlanta has tried their best to begin this transitional period and trying to rebuild to what this team used to be, such a dangerous team for their first couple of seasons in MLS. I mean, it's hard to believe Atlanta has took a huge fall from grace this season and come from a team that were one of the most feared teams in MLS, to a team that, you know, you can definitely get 3 points against them, whether you're playing them on the road or you're playing them at home. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is NYCFC. So they are going to be playing against Toronto, as this game is going to kick off at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. And just like Montreal, NYCFC is going to be playing their rest of their home game at Red Bull Arena, and that's where this game is going to be taking place. Both of these teams, of course, met each other in the round of 16 in the MLS's back tournament, where NYCFC was able to win 3-1 against Toronto. Injury report for NYCFC, there's going to be 3 players that is going to be out. Zelalem and Gray are 2 of the players, but probably the most important player that is not going to be available in this game, or at least for the next couple of games, is going to be Maxi Morales. And again, you know, the struggle this season in terms of scoring for NYCFC, you can point out the fact that there's definitely a lot of underachiever in that striker department, and guys like Aber and Matrita that were just on fire last season has been just stone cold in terms of their goal scoring streak. But losing Maxi Morales in the team, and I really think he showing how much that NYCFC struggle in terms of goal scoring just kind of tells me, not just because their starters is underachieving, but that's how important Maxi Morales is to this team, and he is really the guy that will always pull the string for this team. And without him, you can clearly see they just cannot pull the string on the attack, and they just don't have a true number 10 to feed their striker to score those goals. Now, for TFC, they do have quite a couple of guys that is currently injured. You got Achara, Frazier, Michael Bradley, Aro Jr. are all out for this game. Questionable in this game is Marky Delgado. And for my prediction of this game, I'm going to say it's a draw between both of these teams. Neither of these teams have been great in these last couple of games. You know, NYCFC, this will really be the first time in a couple of games that they are going to be playing against an actual team that could definitely give them some threat going forward on the attack. Whereas for Toronto, defense is a big issue coming into this game. I mean, these last couple of games, and especially the last game against DC United, like giving up 2 goals to a DC United team that's been struggling in terms of scoring goals. That is got to be very concerning if you're Greg Vanney in terms of how bad that defense performed against DC United. But I think this is going to be a draw between both of these struggle teams, and if anything, I would kind of lean toward NYCFC winning this game, mainly because, so far in phase 1 of their schedule, at least for the home games that is, they have played some good opponents, and they tend to able to get resort against some of these good opponents. One of them is the Columbus Crew, who they are the only team in the league so far that is able to hand the Columbus Crew their only loss this season. So yeah, we shall see how this game is going to take place. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the Chicago Fire versus the Houston Dynamo. Now, the Fire is currently coming into this game with a 2-3-7 record, while the Dynamo currently has a 3-6-3 record. This game kicks off also at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Well, this is actually one of what I think will be 4 games that's going to be kicking off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Chicago, of course, lost 4-1 to Orlando away, but that last game kind of just summarized their season in a whole, where this is a team that this does not look like a team that should be belong at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. I mean, when you look at all these games that the Fire has had, they had the opportunity to score goals, and and in some way they kind of also been getting bad luck, like the last game that they had, where there was a lot of referee decisions that gone against the Fire in that game. Well, the Dynamo, they of course drew 2-2 to Minnesota at home and kind of started to cool off a little bit after they went on a hot streak to begin phase 1 of the schedule. Injury report for both of these teams. For Chicago, they do have quite a couple of players that is injured coming into this game. First of all, you got Kronholm, who's going to be out for the season, alongside with Stefanovic, Kapenhoff, Goodhead, and also Przemysław Frankowski not available in this game. For the Dynamo, you got Salazar that is going to be out for this game. Questionable in this game is going to be Wilfred Zahibo coming into this. And you know what? I'm going to go with a little bit of a surprising prediction. I'm going to say the Chicago Fire is going to win this. Because I think, with how much bad luck that they've been dealing with these past couple of weeks, and the fact that the Chicago Fire, as I said many times before, they're due to get a victory. Like, all these bad luck and all these kind of chances that they have missed, that's eventually going to be a case where they're going to eventually put away their chances. And especially against a Houston Dynamo team that, again, this team have definitely cooled off a little bit after they got off to a hot start. And knowing the fact that the Dynamo does not do well on the road, and that Chicago somewhat did well at home this season, although they only have 1 win out of the 3 home games that they had, I have a feeling that with all the bad luck that they've been getting, they're due to finally turn it around, and this is a good opportunity to turn around against a Dynamo defense that isn't necessarily that good, and that all they need to do is to put away those chances and maybe get some good luck on their fortune. They could, of course, able to get all 3 points against the Houston Dynamo. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be FC Cincinnati versus the Philadelphia Union. Now, this, on paper, look like a very one-sided affair, because a lot of people are going to say the Union is going to win this game, and rightfully so, because they have a record of 7-3-2, and they're literally going toe-to-toe with Columbus in terms of trying to get that top spot in the Eastern Conference. And they, of course, won 5 out of their 6 games so far after the tournament is over. While for FC Cincinnati, their record is 3-6. They did win 1-0 against the Red Bulls after that Olympico goal that Medunian was able to score in the 85th minute to snap a relatively long winless run that FC Cincinnati had in that game. And on paper, when you look at that stats, you would think, yeah, for sure that the Union should have no problem against FC Cincinnati in this game. But, for Cincinnati, even though they haven't been great ever since they, of course, got knocked out in the MLS's back tournament, one thing that is kind of interesting about the Cincinnati team is that they tend to do very well when they are at home, and they tend to have kind of games where they, of course, are able to draw 0-0 against their opponents. So something tells me that this could happen again, and especially the Union coming into this game. I'm assuming maybe Jim Curtin is going to think about try to go with a bit of a reserve squad, consider this team only had 3-day rest after their Sunday win against the Montreal Impact, and knowing the fact that you only get 3 days to turn around to play an away game. I would be surprised if Jim Curtin is going to think about starting the same team, especially against a Cincinnati team that is not doing very well. But on the plus side, Cincinnati can definitely take advantage of playing a potential weaker Union team, and that because of that, I think this could potentially be a draw between both of these teams. And I won't be surprised if this is going to be a 0-0 draw, because that's what FC Cincinnati does. Like, so far, I think they're out of their 4 home games that they have this season, 3 of them has ended in a 0-0 draw. And, I don't know if this is going to be the case again in this game, because I think even if the Union are going to start with a reserve squad, they're going to still find a way to score a goal or 2 there. So it's going to be really up to FC Cincinnati in terms of maybe even if they wanted to play a 0-0 draw in this game, they got to also be careful that they don't, of course, go down early in this game or even give up a goal to the Union, because something tells me whenever I see FC Cincinnati give up a goal in a game, most of the time they just kind of capitulate, and they know that they're probably going to lose the game. I forgot to talk about the injury report. For FC Cincinnati, you got McLaughlin, Abdul Salam, and Shimislav Teton is going to be out for their team. And for Philly, the only players that's going to be out is going to be Jack Elliott, while questionable is Kai Wagner coming into this game. But moving on into the final game of this preview. Well, actually, not the final game of this preview, but final game on this board right now. And by the way, since we have so many games that's going to be taking place from this week, you know what that means. I'm going to have to split the preview, or split the review into 2 parts, and that everything you see on this board, this will be part 1 of the review, and that the next board, including the final board that will put the final game of this week, will be part number 2 of the review, which most likely I'm going to do that on Thursday. Well, not most likely. I am going to do that on Thursday, because there's no way in the world I'm going to do two reviews on Wednesday night, especially the last game doesn't finish until 9:30 p.m. my time. And also, I just dropped my pen here. At least the top part, that is. But anyway, moving on to the next game is the Columbus Crew versus Minnesota. Now, the Crew is currently coming into this game with the league best record of 8-3-1, while the Loons currently coming into this game with a 5-3-4 record. This game kicks off also at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Columbus, of course, have yet to lose a single game at home this season. In fact, they haven't drawn any of their game at home either, as they have picked up maximum point of all their games that they have played at home this season, while Minnesota is fresh off of a 2-2 draw against the Houston Dynamo away. Injury concern for both of these teams. For Columbus, Vito Vongor, who is going to be out for the season, Fernando Audi, and Darlington Nagbe, there's no real timeline of exactly when are they going to come back. Well, for Minnesota, you've been hearing me talk about how the Loons have been having some huge injury issue. And here it is. This is the first time I actually put on the board of why I've been repeatedly saying I'm just very concerned about Minnesota for these next couple of games, with so many of their important starters out for this team. One of them is Tyler Miller, who's done for the season. Ike Opara, which we still don't know exactly when is he going to come back. But we do know that Ozzy Alonso, Ethan Finley, and Amaria most likely could be come back as early as next week, because they suffered an injury, I think, back on September 6th, and they said it was a 2 to 3 week that they're going to be out. So most likely, if that timeline is going to continue, they could be available heading into next week. But I'm not quite sure if they're going to be ready for these next 2 games, which include this one against the Columbus Crew, to be in the starting 11. And also, the goalkeeper by the name of Greg is also injured and will not be available in this game. Now, I'm going to say that Columbus is going to win this. And, today when I was doing the video where I talked about MLS officially unveil the remaining part of the schedule, and I kind of come up with this term called throw away games. I almost said throw up games. That doesn't really make any sense, but I come up with this term called throwaway games, and I feel like this is going to be a throwaway games for Minnesota, and I have a feeling Adrian Heath is going to go with a very weak team coming into this game, knowing the fact that, you know, Columbus, again, they have not dropped a single point at home this season, and knowing the fact that the Loons have injury concern and also won't have Jan Gregush after the red card happened in the last game, it will be really stupid if he decided to go with still a relatively strong squad, knowing the fact that the very next game is going to be against RSL at home, which is the same team we were able to win 4-0 a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I just feel like this is just kind of a throwaway game in that he's going to maybe potentially get his reserve team in this game coming in against Columbus. We might potentially see Kai Kamara for Minnesota in this game. It would be interesting to see him play against his former team. But yeah, for the most part, I expect Adrian Heath to really go with a heavily rotated squad, and that I think, as much as I know the Western Conference is very tight right now, and Minnesota is right around that logjam that is going on in the Western Conference, where 1st through 8th place is only separated by 6 points, and you just cannot afford to drop points, or else you can find yourself slip down the table. This is just one of those games. I just don't think Minnesota potentially is going to win this, and that they'll be lucky if they can get a point out of this game. If we get a point out of this game, I will be happy, but you know, I'll take my chances in the next game against RSL, where we can of course get all 3 points. And really, just even looking at the schedule that Minnesota has for the rest of the season, the schedule is not actually that hard for Minnesota. I mean, I know I said before how still they're going to get not as much home games as I'm hoping they're going to get, to just kind of make up for the fact that they've so far played less home games than they have been on the road. But still, there's going to be games where I think they're going to play FC Cincinnati twice, Nashville, and Chicago. Those are the games that I think they could definitely take advantage of getting all 3 points. And let's not forget to mention that their decision day game is going to be at home, which is going to be a huge advantage for Minnesota, knowing the fact that they are a very good team at home. But for this game, as I said, I just don't see Minnesota winning this one, and that Columbus should easily get all 3 points in this game. But moving on in terms of the next match, and actually not moving on in terms of the next match, as I'm going to have to now switch boards and look at the last 7 games that is going to be happening from this week. So moving on, in terms of the next match, is Sporting KC versus Orlando City, as this one is going to be the only game that's going to be national televised on FS1, as this game kicks off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Sporting KC coming into this game with a 6-2-4 record, while Orlando City coming into this game with a 6-4-2 record, and this is definitely a mouth-watering matchup, consider both of these teams are doing well right now, although you could argue Sporting KC is kind of struggling a little bit, because in the last game, they not only lost in the last game, but they blew it. They absolutely blew it in a way that they could have got at least a point out of the game, and then they just gave up a silly goal right at the end to lose Dallas at home and didn't get anything out of that one. While Orlando City, they were able to take care of business at home and win 4-1 against Chicago, albeit they did had some referee decision that kind of gone in favor of them in this one. They still were able to pick up all 3 points in that game. Now, injury reports for Sporting KC. Gutierrez, Roger Espinoza, Daniel Showery, Richard Sanchez, and Martins are all going to be out for this game. And you notice Polito is not on this list. So this kind of tells me that he might be ready coming back with this team. And that I think maybe now that I kind of notice that Polito has been on the injury report, because believe it or not, I am actually going to admit it, that I didn't realize that Polito was in the injury list for a very long time, and maybe that kind of explains why SKC has been struggling in terms of scoring goal, because Alan Polito clearly is the guy that's going to be banging the goals for them. Well, if he's going to be coming back in this game, or at least make a substitute appearance, this would definitely give a huge boost to SKC in terms of going forward. And for Orlando, there's 3 players that is going to be out for them. Dom Duarte, Jean Martino, and RSL is going to be out for them. Now, as I said about Polito, if he's going to be able to play in this game, this will definitely give a good chance for Sporting KC to get a win. But I'm going to say it's going to be a draw between both of these teams, and that I expect this to be a highly entertaining game, and that this should be one that with both teams wanted to get all 3 points, and especially I think if there is a team that needs to get all 3 points in this game, it's got to be Sporting KC, with the way that, yes, even though they're second in the Western Conference, the last couple of games, or at least ever since they got knocked out of the MLS's back tournament, they don't look like a team that is considered a top 2 team in the Western Conference, and that they have shown sign last season during this stretch where they look like the team from last year, which is giving up late goals. Hopefully, they won't do it against Orlando, where, yes, Orlando have won the last couple of games, but they haven't looked as amazing. And even with that 4-1 win that I mentioned, where, again, they did have some referee decision that went in favor of them, and if they were playing a team that were able to put away those chances, that could be a very different game than the one that they, of course, were able to win 4-1 against the Chicago Fire. But other than that, I expect this to be a mouth-watering matchup, and this is kind of the matchup that I feel is the one that should be on national television. Unlike in the last couple of weeks, it's been kind of weird how FS1 has been selecting their national televised game. Like, I remember they decided to choose the Quakes versus the Timbers as the national televised game. Yeah, that's a very strange one to consider. You have a team that is struggling this season, or you have a team that is struggling ever since they got out of the MLS's back tournament, and then you're facing against a team that also struggled coming out of the MLS's back tournament, but the only difference is they won that tournament. But yeah, moving on, in terms of the next match, is Inter Miami versus the Red Bulls. Now, Miami in the last couple of games have been on a bit of a good run with a record of 3-2-7, but they have been able to pick up points in 5 of the 7 games, and they did something historic in the last game against Atlanta by winning their first ever road game by winning 2-1 on the road against Atlanta. Now, for the Red Bulls, their current record is 4-2-6, but they have been really struggling ever since they got back from the MLS's back tournament, as they, of course, took an embarrassing 1-0 loss at home to FC Cincinnati, and this game is going to be kicking off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Now, for Inter Miami, in terms of player that's not going to be available, you got Acosta, Norman Jr., Ulisi, and Julian Carenza not available for that in this game. For the Red Bulls, you got Sean Davis, Mara Segueres are all going to be out for them, while questionable coming into this game for the Red Bulls is going to be Mark Szyakowski. Now, as much as I know people are going to say Miami is going to be favorites, and this is going to be one of those games that it's a winnable game for Inter Miami, and that despite the fact that they are technically unbeaten at home this season after playing their three home games so far this season and able to win 2 and draw 1 of them, I'm going to say that their unbeaten record is going to remain at home, but I'm going to say it's going to be a draw in this game. And the reason why I'm going to say this is a draw is because despite the fact that Inter Miami has shown that they've been able to win games, the very next match they haven't been able to follow up by that. And in some way you could say that they've been kind of a little bit inconsistent, where once they got a big victory, they tend to have kind of that letdown moment and aren't able to follow up with potentially another good result in the very next game, or even getting all 3 points in the very next game. And knowing the fact that they did such a historical moment in the last game against Atlanta by getting their first road win, is there going to be a letdown moment now that they're going to be coming into this game against an inferior opponent, and that it's going to be easy to think that this is going to be a winnable game for Miami, and it's going to be very easy to underestimate the Red Bulls, despite they are struggling a little bit in these last couple of games and that they're kind of in a transitional period. This team can still show up if they wanted to be, and can really surprise Inter Miami in this game. So yeah, I'm going to say it's going to be a draw in this game, but if Inter Miami is able to follow up after that big win and able to be consistent for once, then I think they could potentially win this game. And also for Inter Miami fans, if you're wondering when exactly you're going to see Higuain in this team, well, I'm going to say maybe it's another 1 or 2 weeks that you get to see him, because I know last week he of course was able to touch down in Miami, and that he of course signed the team, which means that I think that means just 1 more week left if he's going through this 2-week self-isolation period that he has to do. So at the earliest, it could be next week that we will see Gonzalo Higuain playing with this Inter Miami team, and it will be very interesting to see how Higuain is going to do in MLS with this team. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is another expansion team. This time it's Nashville SC, and just like Inter Miami that has been having a good run, Nashville is another team that's been having a very good run ever since the season resumed after the MLS's back tournament, as they're going to be playing against DC United in this game. Nashville with a 3-3-5 record, while DC with a 2-5-5 record. This game kicks off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Nashville did lose Columbus in the last game on the road 2-0, but again, no shame of losing to a team that is currently leading the Supporter Shield standing, and the fact that they had a 4-game unbeaten streak coming into that one. While DC, they are currently having the longest winless run, and I actually had to look back in terms of the past couple of results for DC, and I actually didn't realize that they actually have gone almost a similar winless run that the Rapids were actually on when they finished the MLS back tournament. And you know, for a long time I said the Rapids had the longest winless run. Well, that was technically not true, and that DC actually share them with the longest winless run. And the only difference between DC and Colorado is that the Rapids eventually did snap out of that winless run with that 5-0 win against RSL in the Rocky Mountain Cup. Meanwhile, for DC, they still haven't done that, and that their winless run is now the longest in the league with 10 games without a win, if you want to count those resort in the MLS's back tournament, and that they haven't won a game ever since March when they were able to beat Inter Miami at home. Now, injury report for both teams. For Nashville, you got Trippett, Madronda, David Akam, and Abu Dinladi are out for Nashville coming into this game. For DC, yeah, they have a lot of players that is currently injured, starting with Paul Arriola, who's done for the season because of that ACL injury. Then you got Edison Flores, Felipe, another guy that's done for the season, Abu, and Ulises Segura not available in this game. But questionable coming in this game is going to be Steven Birnbaum and also Russell Canals coming into this game for DC United. Now, as I said in the review where I talk about how this is a winnable game for Nashville and that they have been doing well at home, well, that's why I'm going to predict them to win this one. And as much as I know DC looked much better in that last game against Toronto and actually looked like a team that for once can attack instead of just sit there in their shell like that, we'll see if they can continue in this game against Nashville. And that, again, Nashville tends to have a very, very good record when they're playing at home, and they tend to be much better when they're playing at home compared to their road form. So I think this is another good opportunity for them to bounce back after that tough loss they suffer against Columbus on the road. And that I would even say that maybe this is going to be the first time I say that Nashville might be actually favorites coming into this game against a lowly DC United side. Speaking of lowly side, moving on in the next match is the Colorado Rapids against the San Jose Earthquakes. And I want to just say before I get to this match that congratulations, Colorado Rapids. You are this week's winner in terms of getting the free points in the hands of the San Jose Earthquakes, because due to the fact that the Quakes are not only winless in 7 games and look like a team that should be belonging in the NPSL instead of being in the MLS and just pretty much being everybody's punching bag, most likely the Rapids are going to get all 3 points of this game, even if they're not going to start their strongest squad. Now, talking about this game and that the Rapids, in terms of their record, is actually dead even at 4 apiece with 4 wins, 4 draw, and 4 losses, while the Quakes with a 2-5-5 record, and that this game kicks off at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And I'm not going to lie, I'm actually not going to pay a whole lot of attention to this game. I mean, I'll still watch this game, but I'm not going to be paying a whole lot of attention on this game, mainly because I feel like there's other games that is more interesting than whatever the Quakes are doing right now, and most likely they're just, it feels like it could be a waste of time to just watch a team that potentially is going to get their ass handed to them in this one against the Rapids. Now, I know some people will think, well, the Colorado Rapids are not as dangerous as the Portland Timbers in terms of the attack. Well, in some way, yes, it is kind of the case, but here's the thing about the Rapids. In the last couple of games, they definitely shown that they can definitely score goals, and although they have had some issue in terms of finishing in these last couple of games, they have a lot of good young talent that can actually score goals, and especially when you face against this Quakes backline that, again, this Quakes backline, I wouldn't even say this is an NPSL level backline, because that would be just just kind of a disrespect to the NPSL. This backline looked like a backline that I could literally step in here and I could probably do a better job to do it. And I'm not even exaggerating of how bad this backline has been, and that I really don't care if they have gave up no goals against the Galaxy and also only one against the Portland Timbers. It's the fact that not only they're not being consistent, but the way that they just ship goals like fun, and that they could actually finish this season, and even in a shortened season, they could still concede more than 60 goals in this short season, just to show you how bad this back line is. And if it wasn't for this season being shortened, they would have been on record of actually breaking that record that FC Cincinnati hold last year with the most goal conceded, and it wouldn't be even close in terms of how it is. Now, in terms of the injury report for Colorado, you got Courtney for Anomaly that's going to be out for this game. For the Quakes, I think maybe just to kind of be a little bit kind to the Quakes backline, because I know I've been kind of lashing out on that backline a little bit, but just being a little bit kind. They are still dealing with a little bit injuries with Akinarich, Alanis, Casey Wall, and Goran Cascio all out for this team in this game, and all of them are part of the pieces that the team has in the back line, whether they are starting players or just reserve players. But again, at the end of the day, we know that this is going to be a game that the Rapids are going to win, and that there's really not many more I can say other than the fact that, you know, the Rapids should take advantage of this free points that the Quakes are going to be handed to every single team for the rest of the season. And I even haven't even got to the point where I said that the Rapids, when they play against the Quakes at home, they tend to do very well, and that the Quakes always struggle whenever they play against Colorado, whether if the Rapids are good or when they are just terrible. So now move on in terms of the next match. It is going to be RSL versus the LA Galaxy. So Colorado Rocky Mountain rival is going to be taking on the Galaxy in this game, and that the Galaxy are coming into this game with a 4-3-4 record, while RSL is currently coming into this game with a 3-5-4 record. But RSL is really struggling in the last couple of games, and they only won one game in the last 6 that they have played, while the Galaxy did take a tough loss against the Rapids in the last one by losing 2-0 in that game. And this game kicks off at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Injury report for RSL, you got Rossi and Sam Johnson not available for this game for RSL, while for the Galaxy, the only guy that is going to be questionable coming into this game is going to be Acosta, and I'm going to say the Galaxy is going to win in this game. You know, right now I just don't know what's going on with RSL in terms of these last couple of reserve, and that knowing how bad that they have looked in these last couple of games, the confidence level is not going to be very, very high. Whereas they're going to be playing against a Galaxy team that, although their attack have kind of cool off a little bit, this is a good opportunity coming into this game against a very low confident RSL team that their attack can get things going again. And especially the fact that you notice how Chicharito and Jonathan Dos Santos is not on the injury reserve list. Yeah, that's because they should be back in this team, and that if Jonathan Dos Santos and Chicharito, or specifically Chicharito, if he can get going for this Galaxy team, this attack could be just as good as they were coming out of that MLS is back tournament, where their attack was firing on all cylinders after the MLS is back tournament is going to be over. But now, moving on into the last match on this board before I talk about the very last game from this midweek action, is none other than the Cascadia Derby. Now, I think this might be the last Cascadia Derby between both of these teams, because I remember earlier the league basically said that no team is going to be playing against the same opponent for 4 times, and that this is the third meeting between both of these teams this season, which tells me that this got to be the last meeting between both of them. I mean, again, I like the Cascadia Derby. In my opinion, it's my favorite derby and probably the biggest derby in the league, in my opinion. But it's getting to a point where, since they played each other so many times in a short amount of period, it started to kind of lost that important meaning that this Cascadia Derby is whenever it's played yearly, at least two times a season. So, yeah, hopefully this might be the last meeting between both of these teams. And if it's not, then yeah, the league need to revise their definition in terms of the fact that each of the team will not be facing against an opposition more than 4 times, because this is the third time that both of these teams are facing off each other. Now, the Timbers are currently coming into this game with a 5-3-4 record, while Seattle currently coming into this game with a 6-3-2 record. This game kicks off at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Portland, of course, won 6-1 on the road against the Quakes, but that 6-1 win, you know, I'm going to say that game, even though I know that game is going to give Timbers fans a lot of hope in terms of the attack, you got to keep in mind, they were playing against a Quakes back line that, as I said before, is not even amateur level of a back line. And especially now that they're going to be facing against an actual decent team in the Seattle Sounders, who has just been red hot ever since they got eliminated in the MLS's back tournament, getting points in 5 out of those 6 games. And those games that they got points out of those 5 out of 6 games, those games were not against easy opponent. I mean, they've been able to get points against LAFC. They've been able to get points against the Portland Timbers. Yes, they did get points against the San Jose Earthquakes, but this has been a very impressive Seattle Sounders team, and that the only time that they didn't actually able to pick up points was the last Cascadia Derby against the Timbers, where the Timbers had to win that game to try to get their season back, which they did, but it comes with a big cost because Sebastian Blanco in that game was injured, and also later we find out that he, of course, suffered a torn ACL. Speaking of injury report, for the Seattle Sounders, you got Laria is the only guy that's not going to be available in this game. While questionable, you got Jordi Delem that is going to be on the questionable mark in the injury reports for the Seattle Sounders. For the Portland Timbers, yeah, they're dealing with a lot of injuries. You got Darren Asprilla, Sebastian Blanco, and Bulletley. All are going to be out for this game. But the good news for the Timbers is that they're at least going to get potentially some defensive piece back into this game, as Flores, Mabiela, Duval, and Antonella potentially is going to be come back into this game, but they are going to be questionable coming into this one. But for my prediction, I'm going to say Seattle's going to win this one. Not just because I'm just going to continue to keep the trend that it seemed like for the last 6 Cascadia Derby, the road team has won all of those 6 matches, but just judging by the form that both of these teams in, and that the Seattle Sounders are just red hot right now, and they looks like an unstoppable force against a Portland team that, again, yes, they won 6-1 against the Quakes, but that was a lot of that 6-1 win has a lot to do with the Quakes just being a broken MLS team, more than the fact that they are really started to get back together, and that they can start to really find a way to go and run so that they can rise up the table. And that, I think this could be a game where it could be a little bit of a reality check for them against a Sounders team that is really good, and that the Sounders attack is going to really look at this Timbers defense that has been really poor for the past couple of games, and that they're going to be smelling blood in terms of trying to not only win this game but get a big win against their Cascadia Derby neighbor. But that being said, I am going to switch the board one more time to look at the last game that's going to be happening in this midweek action. But now, taking a look at the last game of this midweek action is going to be LAFC versus the Vancouver Whitecaps, and something tells me this is a must-win for LAFC. Because who would have thought that coming into now at this point of the season, that LAFC will actually have more loss than they have suffered this season compared to the entire last season when they won the Supporters' Shield and have a 4-3-5 record. And who would have thought that the Vancouver Whitecaps at this point of the season would have more wins than what LAFC had right now with a record of 5-0-7, and especially how bad the Whitecaps look after they come back from the MLS's back tournament and the first couple of games against Toronto. You wouldn't think that they would be winning a lot of games after that, but now they have of course improved their record to 5-0-7, and I believe they're in 7th place right now in the Western Conference. While LAFC, after they lost 3-0 on the road to Seattle, they now once again find themselves at the 9th place in the Western Conference and just below the red line right now. Now, the good news I will say about LAFC is that despite the fact that you can clearly see this squad is very low in confidence and that there is a lot of players underachieving in this team. One thing that LAFC at least have been doing decently this season is that they've been able to win against teams that they should be able to beat. Like the game against the Quakes, they absolutely smashed them 5-0 in that game. And that in the game against the Portland Timbers, where that seems like it was a must-win game for them, they were able to win 4-2 in that one. And that they're playing a Whitecaps team that, although they of course got a 2-1 win against RSL in the last match, which now means that they of course got a back-to-back wins after they previously won against Montreal. This is going to be the toughest task for Vancouver in terms of trying to stifle an LAFC attack that just, if they can show that they can get to their potential and actually look very decent like they have done when they're playing home games against weaker team, this could be a game that I think LAFC could win, and this might be too tall of a task for the Whitecaps to try and get, because the last two games against RSL and Montreal, those are two teams that don't really have as dangerous of an attack that LAFC is about to bring to the table. So yeah, I think this might be a game that LAFC should win, and they would feel themselves that this is a must-win game for them to get themselves back above the red line. Now, in terms of injury report, you got Carlos Vela, Tristan Blackman, and Traore out for LAFC, while for Vancouver, you got Maxime Crépeau and Kamara out for them. Russell Talbot is going to be doubtful in this game, with Thomas Hassel being questionable in this one, but I have no doubt that he probably is going to be in this game, even though he took a knock in the last game against RSL after Kyle Beckerman, of course, kicked out on him late in the head, and that was also the moment when Beckerman got himself sent off in that one. But again, this is the one that I think LAFC should be able to win, and as much as Vancouver has put a lot of surprising result, this would definitely be one of the more and probably the most surprising result if they can of course pull it off and get maybe at least a point or even a win against a struggling LAFC team. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the preview of this week's midweek action. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all 13 of these games? And as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction in terms of all 13 of these games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.